Scott, Commissioner Rubis, Commissioner Hammond,
Here.
Commissioner Roughton,
Here.
Commissioner Bachert,
Here.
Alternate Adams, I see Mr. Adams is here. Alternate Quarternick, Council Liaison Jaxie, Council Liaison.
Here.
Thank you. Council Liaison Nyan. Excuse me, I skipped Commission Liaison Broyles and Chair Wojciechowski.
Here.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So, well, thank everybody for attending tonight. It doesn't look like a super long agenda, so Robin will go easy on you tonight. It won't be a 4-hour affair or anything, but we have a lot of fun in this commission. So this is what I always call the fun commission. We have a lot of fun on this thing. So hopefully you'll agree with me. So I'll seek a motion to approve the minutes from the May 27th meeting.
I move we accept the minutes.
Second.
Second by Alan. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. So now we got two items of new business that are ready for action. One is the property owner's request to change Old Slave Road name. Joe or Travis, you can take it away.
Mr. Chair, first of all, before we jump into the agenda,
Oh, public comment. Sorry about that.
just for the record, there are no other attendees waiting to be brought forward as a panelist. So there's none that are available. And we did not receive any written comments prior to tonight's meeting. So there is no public comment for the record.
Okay, sorry for skipping an agenda item. Okay, so the first item is the property owner's request to change the street name of Old Slave Road with a recommendation, and that's in Ward 1.
Mr. Chair, I hate to be the one to ask, but I think you have last month's agenda.
Yes.
I think so too. Thank you for being the one.
Okay.
In his defense, that was what was sent in the email. If you searched for the May email like I did.
Hold on. How about if I go to the minutes I signed? How about that? So our first item is this certificate of appropriateness review of the Gimbel St. Ange cabin for proposed alterations to this log cabin, a Wildwood Historic Register property in Ward 6. There we go. I'm on the right agenda now.
Amen.
So, Mr. Chair, thank you. And again, just for those that came on to the Zoom webinar within the last minute or two, there is a new person on the screen. That's Robin Keefe. She is our new planner in the Department of Planning and Parks. And she is here tonight to kind of listen and learn and obviously participate. But she will be replacing Mr. Newberry at our next meeting in July. And so welcome. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, the Department of Planning is in receipt of a request from a property owner that has a historic asset located upon it that is on the Wildwood Historic Register. In this particular case, it is James R. Boland, the mayor of Wildwood, and on his property, he has the Gimbel St. Ange log cabin. The property and asset was placed on the city's register in 2009. And since that time, There have been no requests for any modifications associated with it. As is noted in the letter provided by the property owner, it is his wish and intent to paint the doors a different color as well as the window frames. In reviewing the request, the department went first to the register ordinance that was approved by City Council that establishes the parameters for changes to an asset on the register. And one of the items identified was painting the exterior of the asset. Although the logs and the chinking are not to be impacted, the department interpreted the doors and the window frames as being the exterior of the cabin, and with their change in color, necessitating the certificate of appropriateness. For the commission members, the certificate of appropriateness process is part of the governing ordinance for the Historic Preservation Commission. And for all intents and purposes, it's your opportunity as commission members to review applications for registered properties to ensure that if changes are made, they follow the general guidelines that have been established by this commission and in the underlying ordinance. The property owner also provided a set of color samples, splotches or chips, and all of those are characteristic of the time frame of the construction of the cabin, 1830s. And as noted in the property owner's letter, it is in his intent to ensure that they are pigmented appropriately to reflect that time frame as well. In the review of the application, the department believed it was appropriate, and therefore tonight is recommending to the Historic Preservation Commission a favorable action on this particular matter. In support of this recommendation, the department has provided its report along with the property owner's letter and additional information. And then finally, the register ordinance and the report that was completed by the Historic Preservation Commission in the aforementioned year 2009. Mr. Chair, if there's any questions or comments, the department will do its very best to answer them. And thank you as always for your attention.
Okay, Dan, you got a question?
I propose we approve.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and do a motion in a second, then we can discuss it. So Dan makes the motion. Do I have a second? To approve the certificate of appropriateness of this request.
I'll second.
Okay, Alan is the second. So Joe, the original cabin, it looked like in the pictures, the window frames were the brick red, just like he's proposing to repaint them to. I couldn't see the picture of the front. I couldn't see the front door, but it looks like he's trying to basically keeping it the same color or close to it.
Yeah, in my brief conversation, it appears that he's freshening it up more so than anything. And from that perspective, even if he were to choose potentially a different color, these all are consistent with that time frame. I think that's the best representation of the color that's on the cabin at this time.
Okay.
Mr. Barry, could you focus in on that? Thank you, sir.
Very good. So if there's no other comments other than mine, we can just all in favor on the motion and the second?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm on the right agenda again. Okay, Our next ready for action item is a review and recommendation on SWT's designs proposal for the Route 66 roadside park, and that's in Ward 8.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the commission, as you know from past meetings, this has been a subject of many of our agendas over the last 8 months or so. First and foremost, we started with the discussion about what to do with that half-acre parcel of ground the city of Wildwood now owns on historic Route 66, AKA Manchester Road. Ultimately, after conversations with the commission, the decision was made to do a roadside park in honor of the history of Route 66, the Mother Road, and all it meant to many in America until its decommissioning and change. After that decision was made, the department prepared a request for qualifications that was reviewed by the commission members. Changes were made, and ultimately the request for qualifications was issued, and the response was very, very good. As you recall, we received 10 responses from firms, a broad range of firms with many different qualities and qualifications. Ultimately, the commission selected 3 for interviews. We conducted those interviews via Zoom in March. And then ultimately in April, a decision was made to choose SWT Design for this kind of fun project. In May, representatives from SWT Design attended the Historic Preservation Commission meeting and provided a number of exhibits or plates for consideration. Many of them were, much of the information on them were questions and ideas that they had relative to the roadside park and wanted feedback from the commission members. The intent of the feedback was to fine tune their proposal and then submit the proposal for consideration by the Historic Preservation Commission at tonight's meeting. And tonight you do have the proposal in its final form from the consultant. And if you go through a lot of the more legal components and get to attachment A, I think that's the crux of tonight's discussion, at least from the department's perspective. Attachment A is the scope of work and supplemental services, and ultimately identifies the proposed cost of these services. First and foremost, the department would note that the scope of work is certainly comprehensive and leans heavily on a lot of different meetings with stakeholders, the surrounding community, the Historic Preservation Commission, and others. Along with that, it does include a topographic and boundary survey for the purposes of the conceptual plan design, and then a few other key items. The department would note that the study is almost $50,000 in cost without including the supplemental tasks that were identified. The first being the bicycle and pedestrian counting at the park site, and then public input gathering at the Celebrate Wildwood Festival on September 25th. That amount probably is more than I think the Department of Planning and Parks should advocate for. And certainly in the memorandum, I've noted some things that I would hope that the commission could support in terms of deducts or alterations to the scope of work. First and foremost, for conceptual design, the department does not believe a boundary and topographic and boundary survey is needed. I think that can be done at the time when an engineering firm is engaged by the city for the purposes of the construction drawings and the bidding and permitting process. Additionally, I think the number of meetings can be reduced significantly, thereby also reducing the cost associated with the scope of work. So tonight, the department is not seeking approval of the current proposal, given its cost consideration. but is seeking input from the commission members regarding the items that the department identified as possible changes. And then, of course, any items the commission would identify that they think that should be added or subtracted. Mr. Chair, with that, I'll conclude my presentation and again, certainly want the input of the commission members on this important item. Thank you.
Okay, so Joe, from what you just mentioned, I would assume that SWT would probably get the design work. This is the planning part of things, but it could flow right into that. But that's phase 2 of the project. So you're basically just as far as the topographic and boundary survey. We probably have had the survey because we bought the property, so that definitely could be eliminated. But that could be pushed off if needed to phase 2.
That would be my public statement. I would also note that almost half of this particular property is underground detention for the subdivision Grover Crossing and then this particular site. So it's been engineered already, and there are engineered drawings out there that indicate topography. This particular site was part of a record plat, so there are a meets and bounds description along with an out boundary that already exists. I just don't see for conceptual design purposes the need to spend that additional money now, not knowing how fiscal year 2022 will fund this for, let's say, engineering, bidding, and construction. I think in this particular instance, getting conceptual designs and picking one will help us sell this project to a lot of different constituencies, and constituents. So in more normal times, Mr. Chair, I probably would say get it now and be done with it, but I just don't think we're in that position given the parameters of our budgeting process that have been imposed on us for this fiscal year.
Okay, so that I definitely agree with that. And then reducing the number of design options from 3 to 2. That's one way to clip a little bit out because there's really, it's a small site. So and with the visioning work that they're wanting to do to develop the options, they should have a pretty good indication and 2 options should be. I mean, that sounds reasonable to me. And then the number of meetings seemed like a lot of meetings. So clipping that some would definitely be appropriate. And the supplemental tasks like the bike counts, I know in past years, TrailNet's done bike counts in Wildwood on Route 100 or Old Manchester Road. I don't know if they're going to do them this fall again, but that's certainly something, I run a program like that before, and we could probably do that. We could have volunteers do that count. And it's pretty simple. It's 2-hour periods, 3 days a week. It's not a big deal to do. So yeah, that's something that, $2,500 for that. That's definitely something that could be clipped out. So any other comments? I think everything that Joe mentioned seems very appropriate to me.
Hey, Joe, what's a more realistic number? I mean, I've kind of been involved in some of this kind of stuff. 25 sounds a lot more palatable than 50. And then let's just zero in on a number and let's work to it.
Well, Mr. Roughton, when I was kind of looking at all of this, I was thinking on the high end, 30,000, and kind of the spot I'd like us to settle in was just around $25,000, like you just mentioned. I don't know if that's unrealistic, and certainly SWT Design can tell us that. But at this stage, we're not under contract, and as we've always discussed when we were making the selections of this firm over the other 2 that interviewed, if we can't get an agreeable cost, then we can always go to the others and start negotiations there.
Let's see what we can get for 25.
Well, that's where I'll start and see what they say, if there's no objection from the commission members.
So if it's okay, I would just like to add, I know that as a liaison, I don't think I'm a voting member in this, but I appreciate the work that you put in there, Joe. I like the recommendations that you've made, cutting it down a little bit. And then I certainly agree with the suggestion. Let's give them a dollar figure and see if they can meet what Joe's laid out. 2 versus 3, et cetera. To me, I think that touches the right note.
Well, as far as I'm all for clip and scope and clip and budget. That makes a lot of sense. But to go and say, hey, we want you to hit 25, that should have been something that was done after we selected them. So I'd rather not do that, Joe, personally, but that's just my comments on this. I would say, let's line out the scope items that we want them to clip out and then see where we end up. And if it's palatable, fine. If we need to clip something out, that's fine too. But community engagement was it's only $14,000. So there's a lot we can clip out of that.
Well, with the permission of the chair and the commission, what I will do is give them the direction that's been provided in the department's memorandum, which seems acceptable. Get a revised cost proposal, and if it is over 30,000 and not close to 25, ask them they can do, what else could we do to reduce it a little further? My goal would be to bring something back to you that is in that $25,000 range or as close as possible.
Sounds good.
Sounds reasonable to me.
So, Mr. Chair, I will kind of maybe reversing my course a little. Would it be appropriate, and I would respectfully ask that we do a motion directing the department to return to the consultant with the recommended changes?
Okay, do I have a motion for the departments that go back to SWT?
I'll make the motion.
Motion by Chris, second by Dan. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed?
Thank you all.
Okay, our next item is a discussion on the update of the Missouri Bicentennial Celebration for 2021, the time capsule for our cities, and that's in all wards. That was our homework assignment, right, Travis? And I snuck a few in at the last minute today. I don't know how good they were, but I snuck them in.
Well, Mr. Chair, you're before a jury of your peers. And so what some of you have done have provided your suggestions to the department, and we've scanned them in and can do share screen. I believe we have 5 of those, maybe 4 or 5. And we can start with however Mr. Newberry placed them on the share screen for the PowerPoint for the purposes of the share screen. And then I'm going to let Mr. Newberry narrate from there, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will present them as I received them in my email. So we're going to start with Ms. Stevens. And as I introduce it, each item, I'll allow Ms. Stevens to explain her items.
Well, this is the map of, and I don't know where I got it. I've had it for some time, of a driving tour of Wildwood. And then there's the map, and then there's a description of each one of the stops. And I thought that could be one of the graphics that we have in for one of the sections. Probably fits in pretty good to the past and the also the future. Past, present, and future. By working toward historic preservation of our community, we are promoting an appreciation of the past while working in the present so that future residents will gain a knowledge and appreciation of those who came before them. The city of Wildwood is a combination of 11 small historic communities, and thought maybe we might be able to put just a little bit of a clip of each one of the communities to give a kind of a history of the city. You know, and starting past, I thought, thinking before we were a city, some of the photo ideas I had were the Essen log cabin, and then I was wrong that the picture of the Indians that came to the area every summer was not in the history book, but it was in the one-room school book that Karen Fox had authored, and it's on page 98 of that book. And then using the Glencoe marker to show info on the first whites Anglos into the area. We continue to document history in the present in order to preserve our history. And then we would come in with all of our different community markers. I was thinking of a photo of the farmer's market to show what's going on. And I said ribbon cutting as a city, but some picture that shows the beginning of Wildwood as a city with the even using the city logo. And then for the future, tomorrow or the future will be able to learn Wildwood's history because of our preservation efforts. Thought maybe if we had a picture of the booth that we've had at various Celebrate Wildwood events, showing the mock-up of our history signs and passing out the history books to the people. Having a picture of Old Pond School shows that, you know, it's being used and will continue to be used in the future. And then the History of Wildwood book, maybe we could have a picture of what either the one that we've used the past couple of years, or if we have a picture of what the cover will look like. And then the historic tour map. And then after I sent that in, I was thinking also of our points of interest maps, that maybe some of that included. But, you know, we only have a 1/4 inch thick, so. So those were my thoughts off the top of my head, but trying to tie in past, present, and future in some of the things that we write.
And that was well organized too, Jan. Thanks.
I'm working on the same thing for a couple of other groups, so.
Way more organized than I was. So that means Jan was first in, right, Travis?
That's correct.
Okay.
Because Jan knew she couldn't do any screen sharing and she was going to have Travis do it.
And Mr. Chair, if you'd like, I'll move on to the next
Yeah.
that I received, which was from Mr. Roughton. And Mr. Roughton, if you'd like to present your items.
Yeah, as far as a quote goes, very simple. We cannot adequately plan for our future without first understanding our past.
That's good.
Kind of summation of what we do. And then moving on to the next one, when we want to talk about past, a picture of a class of 1923 Old Pond School. And then when we move to an example of the present, would be a class of 2021, basically 100 years later for the Pond Elementary School. What's interesting about that, I started searching for pictures, and with COVID, there are none. And I don't know if we want to maybe even put a footer on something like this that explains because of COVID, it was all out of school learning for this year. Just a thought. And those are my two examples.
And Mr. Chair, you were the next to submit. So let me get yours pulled up.
Yeah, and Joe, you know, I was trying to pull out my old 109 commission work, and I couldn't find anything. So, including where all the roundabouts came from. So, this is from a presentation or a packet from a few years ago. I dug out of my file drawer. So, of course, it's centered on Route 66, right? So, and then this is a training class. That was a past. I got a couple past pictures, and then this was more of a present. Well, not so present. It was 2015, but it was just kind of captures the biking community that the city of Wildwood is, and then just another picture of the Big Chief cabins that most people don't realize were there. So there's way more than just the Big Chief that's there now. And then there's the Shots garage as it looked years ago. So that's what I scraped up.
Mr. Chair, those were the last items that the department received in advance of tonight's meeting, but certainly if other commission members have items they'd like to share, I'll let you manage that.
Yeah, unfortunately, all my MoDOT files, Joe, I guess the 109 commission was run by MoDOT. And I don't know where that stuff's at anymore. But it would be interesting to, just to show where, the plan for Route 109 from Westridge Oaks all the way up to Wild Horse came from, and that the city is actually progressing, and it's coming together just as was planned. So
Kind of nice when that happens.
yes, it is.
Mr. Chair, if there's no objection, Mr. Jaxie and I had a conversation a couple of days ago, and he offered some suggestions, and I had a couple of thoughts. So if you don't mind, we can share screen and show our collective wisdom and see what you think.
Sure. Yeah, was that the bumper sticker, Joe?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
So the first couple of these are bumper stickers that were provided to me sometime right after the incorporation. And as you know, the incorporation really didn't start out as an incorporation effort. It started out as an effort to stop State Route 109 from being improved to almost an interstate standard like Route 141. That group coalesced into even a greater number of groups, which is the next slide. And that was Save the Greenbelt, Stop the Outer Belt. But more importantly, you can see in the fine print that one group grew into about 6. And actually, that's what kind of coalesced the incorporation effort. And every once in a while, you still hear about the Greenbelt.
Where are all the websites that are supposed to be next to the names of each of these groups? How come there's no websites listed on these?
Good question. The next one is actually yard signs were very popular prior to the vote in February 1995. This is a yard sign that was preserved, and on it are the signatures of many of the original incorporators. I took a picture of it because of its size, but it's just something to consider as well. Unfortunately, when I went through the list of names, many of them have passed. And that was kind of a sad reminder.
Yeah.
The next item, and I think this is from more Colonel Jackson than I. We were talking about the Watershed Erosion Task Force and what we're trying to do to protect our watersheds, particularly the mainline channels. And this map with, I think, some nice colorization shows all of the locations that residents contacted the city with concerns about. Most of them are in their backyard or literally their front yard, whatever the situation might be. But it's a nice representation just from the standpoint it shows basically all of Wildwood and shows a problem that we're working on now, the present. Hopefully when the time capsule's opened, all of those green dots with red centers will be resolved.
And that, if I can add to it, Joe, that kind of comes out of the military guy in me. We do something in the military called a hot wash, where we go back and when we finish something, whatever it is we finished, we go back and we review to see what went well and what went poorly. And I guess my thoughts with this one, when Joe and I were talking about it, was, you know, this is a present project that's obviously very important, arguably one of the top 3 priorities. I think it's important that 25 years from now, somebody opening a time capsule look back and say, well, they really did a great job and we're much better off for it, or wow, they missed the mark. But I think it's something important, at least from a council perspective, that we're working on, and might be informative to the future.
Yeah, very, very good point, Rob. I mean, there's not enough before and after assessments that people do just to see how well you're doing.
Well, and then in our conversation, and this might add very well to what Ms. Stevens said, in my conversations with Joe, the one idea that I came up with for the past, and I'm going to avoid sharing my screen right now because I'm in a very remote location. I'm just happy to be on at all. But I approached Councilmember Rambo, and I don't know how many of you know Rob Rambo, but his family has been around Wildwood for an extremely long time, since turn of the century easily. And I approached him asking, do you have photos of the old family farm? His family farm was located near Henkin and Manchester 100. And he's got just a plethora of photos that I know he's turned over to the Historical Society. But there's some of them that really, I think, paint a picture of, one surprised me, frankly. One of them showed a picture of ground that was very open and didn't have a lot of trees back when that photo was taken compared to today. And when you see the same photo today, it's covered in trees and some of them approaching, grand status. So it's to me, it's just telling of Wildwood's history, a history that I frankly did not know. I didn't know that there was a lot of open ground that is now, heavily forested. So there's that, but there's a lot of family history in the farm and that area. Ancestors that were had a big role to play in the Route 66. They had a station of their own in that. So I have some pictures that I think, and I'm sure that there are plenty of, members of the commission that have pictures that might add to Ms. Stevens' portrayal of the past. We could show a lot of pictures, I guess, to portray the past, but then, move forward into the future with something like this, the watershed or water erosion task force. Anyways, those were my thoughts to add to you, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. The last item that came out of the conversation, and this is again from Colonel Jackson, is the Village Green plan. And obviously the Village Green isn't there, but it's been superimposed onto, I consider as one of the prettier pictures we have of a sunset in Wildwood. And so this was the thought as well.
Yeah, all those are, I mean, this is really the future. This is what future slide. So I was just thinking about the town center too, when I first came out here to visit my my brother-in-law's mom, who lives on Lindy Lane, and looking down Taylor Road years ago and what it looked like then, and look and seeing what it looks like now. Big, I mean, it's an unbelievable difference how far we've come. from the start of Wildwood. So, Travis and Joe, what are your thoughts? Are we talking about 8.5 by 11s of these? Do we want to? There's not a whole lot. We don't have a ton of things right now. So is there enough to put all these in, and we just have to organize them into the past, present, and the future, or what are your thoughts?
Well, Mr. Newberry has done thorough research and the maximum size is 8.5 by 14
That's correct.
Legal size.
legal size. And all of our collection cannot be greater than 1/4 inch thick, correct, Mr. Newberry?
That's correct.
So what I would suggest is if you do have photographs or other items you'd like to provide, if you could bring them by City Hall, then Robin, Travis, and I can kind of put them into some order, get them back out to you and see what you think. If they're 1/4 inch thick, then we're in good shape. If they're over that, we'd like your input on what stays and what goes.
Okay. That sounds reasonable to me. Everybody up for that? And Joe, I can also, if you plan a time, you sit down, I can plan on coming by, and I don't want to throw it all on you three, so I can definitely come by. I put enough hours in, so yeah, I could take off a few hours and do this.
No, that'd be much appreciated. In fact, if we wanted, we could actually post it as a meeting and everybody could come by. We could do it down in the community room and socially distance. And if you're not vaccinated, all we would ask is that you wear a mask, but.
I mean, come by if you can.
Yeah, so why don't we do this? Let's Robin, Travis and I look at some dates, probably right after the 4th of July. And if you all want to come on in and bring what you've got, then we can take a look at it then. We'll post it as a meeting. And if we have a quorum, we'll be safe. If we don't, no harm done.
Sounds good. Everybody like that idea?
Yes.
Okay.
We always have cold soda, cold water, and I'll even make some coffee.
This is what's known as bribery.
As long as it's
Well, I was
not
going to
cold.
throw in the cookies if I had to.
I was getting a call from Spam Risk, believe it or not.
So you'll get an email from Robin with some options the week of the 5th, obviously not the 5th since it's the holiday, and maybe just creeping into the week of the 12th. I think we have till August 10th, Mr. Newberry.
That's correct.
We have about a month's time. So we're not under a rush, but we'll get it done as quick as we can. And again, all I'm asking is if you have something like you provided tonight, or if you want to spend the next week or so looking for things, bring it along, bring your best defense, and we'll see what we've got.
Sounds good. Thanks everybody for your help on this and for the work over the next month. So our next time is an update on the 2021 work program.
Mr. Newberry will be providing it as part of his last meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I didn't plan to cover everything on the list. I just wanted to highlight a few items. The item number 5, offer input and oversee, approve the descriptions of the points of interest map. The department expects to have that item available hopefully at the July meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And then the other item I wanted to highlight was item number 15, review of the historical aspects of the Yost property. And I'll defer to Joe for any additional details, but the transfer of the property from the trust to the city is anticipated to be completed by the end of this summer.
So just to follow up on what Travis mentioned, surprisingly, if you think back when we visited the property, it still has not yet been transferred from the trust of Ms. Yost to the city of Wildwood. there's a lot of legal reasons associated with that. And for the most part, we've kind of jumped all of those hurdles and we're in a good position. And so one of the final things we did was our due diligence relative to a phase 1 environmental assessment. And for the most part, nothing came back that was worrisome. Just some debris in the creek beds, which is typical of many rural sites in Wildwood and elsewhere. But we also requested access into the house. The house was built in the early 2000s, and we met with a mold specialist. And as soon as we walked in the front door, he said, "You got a problem." And fortunately, the air conditioning was on. It was a hot day, but he said, "You've got water running somewhere in here." And so we went downstairs, and the pressure container for the groundwater well had sprung a leak. So there was water in the basement, and there was heavy mold on many of the upstairs surfaces. So we've received a bid from Mold Solutions to remediate. It's about, I think, $12,000. And so that'll be something that we'll be working through here very shortly. The appraised value of the house, though, is about $190,000. So even with the mold situation, I think we'd be unwise if we considered the removal of the house this early on without exploring all the options it might present for our residents. But we're moving forward, and hopefully by the time the weather gets cool again and the ticks and chiggers have retreated where they belong, hopefully somewhere not where we are, and we can go back out there again and get another look at what we've got and kind of start thinking about the future of that property. Other than that, as Mr. Newberry said, we weren't intending to go through each of the items. A couple of the items have been delayed just because of the department being shorthanded. We still haven't obtained the third bid for the painting of the exterior of Old Pond School, which is a priority. I believe we have that appointment with the third company next week sometime. We're going to try to make that arrange. And we still haven't gotten bids relative to the Orville marker. I'm almost tempted to just put the marker up and then build the pad afterwards. And so that's something I kind of wanted to mention to you all as commission members and see what you thought of that.
I personally think that's a great idea,
I
Joe.
do.
All kinds of thumbs up.
Yeah. I don't.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah. I
I'll
say
be-
get it done.
we couldn't understand you, Deborah.
No, I say get it done. Thumbs up.
Thank you.
Do you need a motion on that, Joe, or do you want to just run with that one?
Now I'm going to go ahead, like we've done with all the others, the 10 that are installed. We just had Glenn Gailey Contracting do the work under an existing maintenance contract that the department has with him for fiscal year 2021. So we'll put it at the location that was identified by the commission, and then we'll work on getting the other two bids for the parking pad. But, you know, given the time of year and the ground hardening up so quickly with summer heat and sun, you know, most people could pull off and enjoy it and not do damage. And if they do, we'll fix it and then eventually have the pad there that we've agreed to. So thanks for that direction. I was thinking, let's just get it up so we can say it's up and go from there. Thank you.
Are there any other items immediately that I know there's a bunch of them underway? Is there any other ones that you expect? Oh, well, you've got plenty of work to do, but is there anything that's kind of you're getting ready to kind of go on like, these nomination forms for the memorial policy and stuff like that. I know it wasn't like a landslide vote or anything with the council, so it was kind of close.
Well, that's a very good point. And thanks for bringing it to my attention. As you know, we created a memorial program for what we might call champions of history. The impetus or the reason we talked about it was the untimely death of Lisa Kelp. So I think the impetus now is on the department to get you all the paperwork that we would need if someone were to nominate a person. And as the chair mentioned, there was some differing opinions on city council about this program. And so their perspective, and rightly so, is let's do one. Let's see how it works. And if there's problems, we can fix it. And if there are major problems, maybe we don't need to do it. And so what I'd like to do is probably sometime the beginning of fall, not July or August, because we're moving back into live events now. And then the next item on the agenda is the reason why I'll say, can we wait till fall to get you all that paperwork? Thank you.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. And we need to, we're gonna have to work through it. I read some of the notes on the concerns, and it's not going to just be a haphazard program. We're going to scrutinize nominees, and they're going to be worthy of the recognition. That's the bottom line. It's not just because you've put your time in on the commission. You have to have done something that's worthy of emulation as a keeper of history, champion of history. So I think it's going to be what we make of it, and we're going to show how good this program is going to be. So,
and the rest of the city is welcome to reward anybody else in the entire program that they'd like to reward. And if they don't want to participate, that's fine. We've taken the incentive to go out there and reward people for their hard work. And if somebody's got a problem with that, then maybe they ought to look at rewarding their people for their hard work.
Okay, so Joe, we got one more item on the agenda, right? And that's the discussion of the points of interest map.
Yes, sir.
Correct. Okay.
So typically I do not say something to a commission and then not come to fruition with it. So I promised you back at the May meeting, you'd have the incorporation chapter before this meeting. You have not. The incorporation chapter is finished. I've read it multiple times. I've edited it multiple times, and I still don't like it. So I'm struggling with it because it's an important topic, and to some that work so hard to make the city and then have continued to support the city over the past 25 plus years, it deserves that attention. So over the holiday, it is my intent to give you something after that holiday that you can all then tell me what you think. It is done. Like I say, I just don't feel like I don't feel it's the quality of the other chapters we have in the history book, but we'll get there. The points of interest.
You got a fresh set of eyes there. Robin could kind of, although she's not going to say anything bad about your writing, it would be good to have a new set of eyes look at it.
Well, I didn't hire Robin just to say yes to everything. I expect, as I get from Mr. Newberry, critical reviews, just like anybody else on staff. So, and the points of interest map, that is going to be Robin's first major assignment. And we picked, as you know, the Westland Acres area in the northeast quadrant of Wildwood. So what's that all mean for Celebrate Wildwood, where we usually have a big splash with the products that we've worked on during the year? I can almost guarantee you we'll have the points of interest map ready. But I don't know if the history book will be ready, because as you remember, when Kathy Arnett was doing the legwork with publishers, most of the publishers said they needed at least 2, if not 3 months to have the first run of books prepared. If you back out of September 25th, we're right on the cusp of 3 months. So I guess I'll say more to follow. I need to find, you all had selected the firm down in the Chesterfield Valley for the publication of the book. We need to find that contact information and reestablish contact and see if anything's changed with them. So
When it's sure time flies, doesn't it, Joe? It just seems like yesterday we discussed that and shoot.
well, and not to end the meeting on a sour note, we do have the 5th chapter completed by Miss Von Gruben. So we have all 5 chapters done. We're just minus the incorporation. And as I promised, you'll get whatever I've got and we'll go from there. And we'll have the points of interest map for the Celebrate Wildwood event, which will bring us to that conclusion as well.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks
My
for that.
apologies.
Well, it's not time yet for you to let it out. So when you're ready, we'll be ready to read it. So
Sounds right.
anybody got anybody else, anything else good for the order that you want to mention? Well, it's like a record. It's a 1-hour meeting, almost a little over an hour. So.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I could, just a quick thank you from me to you all. It's been fun working with you for the past couple months, and I'm not going anywhere, so I hope to see you around.
Hey, Travis, thank you.
It's always a pleasure, Travis.
And I think I speak for Robin and Travis and wish you the very best of the July 4th holiday. And hope you have
Will
fun.
our next meeting be in person?
Sir, that's a good question. Most of that decision-making process is above the Department of Planning and Parks. It rests with the mayor and the city administrator. We're back in person at City Council. We did that a couple of weeks ago. I'm expecting us to start doing that full time, but I just don't know when.
Well, let's hope. Fingers
Yes.
crossed.
Yes.
So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So move.
So moved.
Moved by Dan, second by Jim. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great
Thank
night.
you.
Night.
Nice seeing you. Nice meeting you, Robin. See you soon.
Nice meeting you all. I look forward to working with you.